What's going on, guys? This is episode 18 of Dispersing the Cloud. I'm running way behind because it is Monday. But last week, starting my little recap, I climbed Mount Shasta. So it was difficult for me to get all my reading done, put the podcast together, prep for it, and then get it out because I also did a wedding. So that's why I'm so late on this week's episode. Actually, it's last week's episode. But we did Mount Shasta. That was probably one of the hardest and most amazing things I've ever done. We did something called Castle Ridge, which is actually one of the hardest routes that you can do to get up to Mount Shasta. It took us 16 hours to get up and back. Pretty cool. We had to rope up at times. At one point, I was on a block of ice pretty much with my toes punched into the side using an ice axe to climb. That was pretty cool. I'm scared of heights. It was incredibly scary, but cool. What else? At a wedding, and I got racks put in for storage for Josh and the Sock Army books, and we already started booking for next year, and we booked a couple for the end of this school year too, so things are moving on that end. For the process this week, I wanted to read this poem that was given to us at the very end of Mount Shasta by our guide. One cannot stay on the summit forever. One has to come down again. So why bother in the first place? Just this. What is above knows what is below, but what is below does not know what is above. One climbs, one sees. One descends and sees no longer, but one has seen. There is an art of conducting oneself in the lower regions by the memory of what one saw up high. When one can no longer see, one does at least still know. I thought that was a pretty cool poem, pretty cool quote, and a nice reminder of when we are here in the lower regions, for anyone who hasn't done any hiking at all, and just really got on the peak of the highest mountain around and been able to look at the vastness of what is nature, it really speaks to your inner spirit, whether you are religious or an atheist. It speaks to you, I believe, in the same way, of just an awe-inspiring vision. What up, Troy Baker? So there's an art of conducting yourself down in the lower regions. Once you've seen those things, there is a much calmer and a much holistic view that you have about your surroundings. Yeah, that was just a really cool poem that I wanted to share for the process. This week's book, so I did say I was going to read Unfinished. I was unable to read Unfinished in the allotted amount of time. It was like a 7-hour read, and I didn't have 7 hours to knock that out. This podcast wouldn't have got out till like 2 or 3 o'clock. I would love to come to Switzerland. Troy's on here talking to me. Dude, I'm down. Set me up with some churches to play at or some schools to read, and I'm on my way. Or climb a mountain. I don't care about that. So I ended up reading The Secrets of Power Negotiation. No, it's not Donald Trump's book. This is by Roger Dawson. Recommended to me by 3 or 4 different people. Great book. Some of the most usable material that I've read in the last, 17 weeks, 18 weeks, around 18 weeks. Really usable information for anybody who is in sales, for anyone who's ever bought a car, for anyone who is having trouble communicating with their spouse, like all the above. This is just communication 101 and how to negotiate. The title of the book is To Get What You Want, but the author is very clear that this is not a book on how to swindle people out of the things that they have. This is really a book on how to teach people to do win-win scenarios in negotiation, and it's not about getting what you want over somebody. One of the most important things in this book that kind of got brought to my attention was perspective. Not everybody has the same worldview as you, and not every everybody has the same perspective as you. Just because they think differently than you doesn't mean they're wrong. They could just be looking at it from a different perspective. And I think that our personalities play a lot into play a lot into that. And then that being said, not every personality type and not every person is going to want the same thing that you want. One of the stories that was told in this book was a story of a shopping, or not a shopping center, but a lot that an older gentleman owned and didn't want to sell. And he had been asked before a couple times. He didn't want to sell it, had no interest in money. He was very, very well off. And the proposed buyer talked to people who knew him and said, hey, tell me about this guy. Just tell me everything that you know about him, what his deal is. And so they tell him he's on his way out. He's pretty financially secure, doesn't have any interest in money. And that's why he's not interested in your offer to buy the property. And so he came back. The buyer came back with a different proposal. He said, I'm going to give you equity in the endeavor that I'm going to undertake. It's going to be a shopping center. I'm going to give you equity, but it's not going to be you. I'm going to give your granddaughter equity. I'm going to give your granddaughter equity in this endeavor that I'm going to do, and we're going to name the shopping center after you. The guy not only sold the property, but he just signed it over to him. He didn't even sell it to him. He got it for free. It just cost him a little bit of equity and to name the center after him. So it just goes to show you that people don't always want what you want. You might think money, but that's not necessarily what somebody else is wanting out of that transaction. So this book kind of tells you how to dig down and ask the right questions to find out what people's motivations are and what their true needs are. This is a really cool quote from the book. Do not confuse price with flexibility. Meaning, you could tell yourself you're a great negotiator, but if you have to lower your price to get the deal, that's not flexibility. You're just a bad negotiator. You're not flexible. You really just don't have any negotiation power. And so that was an interesting thing for me to read, especially because coming from a sales world, really you heard that all the time. Like, oh, look, tell them we can be flexible with them. Tell them we can be flexible. We'll lower the price. Just let them know that we're flexible. And really all we were doing is letting them know that we were bad negotiators and couldn't work out a good deal. If you move price, that's not good negotiation. All in all, this book was really informative. Definitely a 4-star book. A little old school. I think it was in the 80s it was written, but the guy's done seminars all over the place. And it's just a great book. Upcoming next week, we have recording and mixing all this week. I said next week, but because I'm late, it's this week. We have recording and mixing all week. I started a running regiment. I'm trying to get back into cardio shape. One of the things on Mount Shasta that I noticed was my cardio is just horrible. I'm still good enough to climb Mount Shasta, but I want to feel good when I climb it. I don't want to feel tired. That's just the competitive nature inside of me. And then I'm going to try to make some sparring this weekend, maybe Friday, or open sparring on Saturday, because I kind of want to hit somebody. It's therapeutic, and it's been a while since I've got in some sparring, so if I do get in sparring, I'll try to get some footage of that. And then my word of inspiration for today is going to go back to that poem. If you guys want to read that poem, you can go check it out on my Instagram page. On my Facebook page. And I'm going back to that poem. How do you conduct your first word of inspiration? When was the last time you got out into nature for an extended period of time? Not for a day, not for a day hike, but 2, 3, 4 days being away from civilization, just being with yourself and maybe one other person. And then 2, how does that affect you? How can that experience add to the way that you conduct yourself in the lower regions? That's all I have for you guys today. Troy, it'd be great to see you, brother. I know you're in Switzerland right now. Come home soon, man. I'll talk to you guys later.